You are listening to the Happy, Healthy, Hot Mom Summit, where you will discover how to be fit, sexy, and energized, even if you are a busy mom. With your host, top female fat loss and hormone specialist, Dr. Michelle Sands.
Hi, welcome back to the Happy, Healthy, Hot Mom Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Sands, and today we have Dr. Louise Kane Buckley. She's a naturopathic doctor out of Hong Kong, and she works with all kinds of people, helping them be healthy naturally. She has a book out which is about fermenting. She's working on another book, but her passion right now is children's health. So she works with a lot of children. She's a mom herself, and today we're going to talk about getting your kids to enjoy real food and actually treating them with real food. So, Louise, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome.
So excited. So let's. I'm just interested. I was always interested in everybody's origin story. What got them started in health, the health field, and for you, naturopathic medicine. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what had you land in nutrition and naturopathic medicine?
Sure. Yeah, it's a bit of a strange venture into it, but I originally trained as an actress and was doing a lot of waitressing, and so I decided I wanted to look after my health and I wanted to use my brain a bit more as well, so I decided to become a personal trainer. So I did that for a while, and then I was really noticing that people weren't really achieving their goals through exercise alone. So which way did I want to go? I was thinking maybe yoga, mind body, or going down the nutrition route. And when I was researching that, I found naturopathy, and originally I was kind of a bit like, oh, that's a bit hippie. And then when I started actually learning about it, I was like, oh, wow, I was getting really cross about things that we'd been taught that were, considered healthy, but actually weren't healthy for the body at all. And it really kind of got me really passionate about educating people about what healthy food can really do for your body and how much you can heal yourself naturally, and started doing it for myself. I had massive issues myself with IBS and digestive and immune system stuff. So it was really through, finding a way to heal myself and be a better person myself and help my clients that then kind of morphed into this crazy situation where I got pregnant and I had kids myself, and looking at my kids and wanting to strengthen them and the correlation between them and other kids as well, and the chronic issues that we were seeing about kids has really made me really passionate about helping kids to be healthy and strong, and yeah, just to function. Kids aren't functioning properly, so helping them on that level.
Awesome. Yeah. It's so funny because I have a similar story with starting out in personal training, and I was in my 20s when I was personal training. So I was super fit, but I was eating like in the way that I was taught, which is not the way that I teach now.
Yep.
And I was just thinking that like the 30-something-year-old housewives that I was training were lying to me. Like, why aren't you losing weight? You must be not lying. You must be eating donuts. But the thing is that just what I was teaching at that time didn't work. So, we both kind of found naturopathic medicine to help it. And so I just had a baby now, so I am just kind of getting my feet wet in the children's eating. So I'm so glad to have you here today to talk about nutrition for children. So you were already a naturopathic doctor when you had your children?
Yes, yeah, I qualified, I graduated, and then I had my first child. So it's over 6 years now that I've been practicing as a naturopath, using a variety of tools. I've retrained since. I use food. I also, you have to really counter into the emotional side of things, especially with children. Children are people, and they have emotions and they have personalities, and often that's not really taken into account when you're looking at children's health. And one size fits all doesn't apply to adults. Why should it apply to children? So it's really about catering to the individual needs of that specific child. Their entry into life will affect their nutritional needs, and also their personality and their emotional needs. So I I use a lot of EFT, which is the tapping. I use a lot of Bach flower remedies, which is an energy-based medicine, and things like that. It's amazing what kids can teach us with energy medicine as well. So there's lots of things that we can be appreciating about children's health that maybe we didn't think about until you have a child in front of you and they're screaming and you've done everything, and then suddenly give them some rescue remedy or something, and it's amazing, or homeopathy, and it's quite incredible to actually see kids respond in your own life, which can then help you with parents in similar situations.
Yeah, I always find it really interesting that children seem to respond really well to holistic natural treatments because they're very open as children. Like, they're very aware kind of what's going on, and they don't have that mental block that they don't believe it's going to work like some adults do. So children are actually great. And yes, they are little people. Like, they do have little personalities. And like, when it comes to, dealing with their health or their well-being for that matter, like, listening to them and learning from them, I think that's so important that you said that. Go ahead.
I often ask the parents of the children that obviously the children are my clients, but most of the talking is with the parents. Yeah. And I often ask them to bring the child, maybe not to the first session if they're babies or little kids, unless obviously they need to be with their parents, because that can be quite distracting sometimes. But it's really important for me to find out a bit about their personality, because it can really inform what the issues are, especially when you're looking at issues in babies, the colic issues, the reflux issues. Quite a lot of that is actually the child's reaction to something that's strange, and fear factor, rather than there necessarily being a physical issue with the child. So it can be really helpful in that respect, because you can use Bach flower remedies from birth. So things like that can be really helpful in helping children.
Just for people who aren't familiar with Bach flower remedies, can you just talk a little bit about that real quick?
Sure. They're based on the idea that energy can't be destroyed or created. It can only be transferred. A little bit like homeopathy, where you take the properties of something from nature. So all the Bach flower remedies are either flowers or trees, and there's a rock in there as well randomly. But it's all about taking the energy of something that's around you and helping it to heal your emotions, really. You have a negative and positive side to all emotions, and the personality of the plant gets transferred into the personality of the person and can help support them emotionally. If that's probably as basic as you can get.
Yeah, that's a beautiful explanation, actually. Yeah. You did a very good job. So for children, when they come into the world, there's a couple different options for giving them nutrition. There's, of course, breastfeeding, which I would recommend if it's possible. And then if it's not possible, if there's an issue, what's your second best option? Do you have a...
Well, it's a tough question, because replicating breast milk is really difficult, because breast milk has all of the components within it beyond just the macronutrients, the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats. And formulas go halfway there. So I'd say my first option after breastfeeding would be to try and look up a homemade formula, looking at the Western A Price recipes for those to begin with. And then after that, looking at probably more of a goat's milk formula to begin with, because some of the proteins in goat's milk are less irritating than those in cow's milk, for example. And then beyond that, making sure that those nutrients within the formula are actually accessible to children. So seeing if you can have some kind of fermented aspect. So I often sometimes will it depends on the person, obviously, and the needs, but I will also recommend adding some sort of water kefir or something like that to the baby's diet to help them to digest the formula, and take it kind of from there then.
That's a good idea. I actually do a homemade formula from the Western A Price Foundation for my son as a supplement to his breast milk. So I actually have that on my website for anyone who's interested. So now that they're getting ready to introduce foods, what are some of your tips that you give to parents as far as when to do that, and then
Yeah.
what to introduce?
It's one of those things where everybody uses age as the indicator for the child to start eating, and it really needs to go beyond that because it has to be about the structure of the child as well. Is the child able to sit on its own accord, for example? Because essentially the digestive system is a tube, and if that tube is slumped and all kind of folded over and kind of all but kind of askew, then that child isn't going to be able to process that food correctly and comfortably, really. So the child has to be able to hold its own head, has to be able to sit relatively unaided, and kind of in the bumbo seats, those bumbo seats where they're upright but they're not really upright. Those aren't really a great idea to start feeding. You need to be the child, and also those what they call the baby chairs that you can lie back and the child can be fed. Also, it's not really a good idea because if things are going to get trapped, they're going to get trapped in those situations. So it's best to wait until the child can sit up. And then it's really important that the child can actually physically move food from the table to their mouth, because that's an important first step for babies to be able the motor skills necessary to do that indicate that your child is ready. So what I did with both of my kids was I sat them on my lap and I would eat a pear, because pears are quite soft and juicy. Right. So I'd eat a pear over their head, and when I indicated to me that they're ready to feed was that they would look and actually grab it and shove it in their mouth. No, and they're just sucking on it. So that would indicate to me that, okay, they're interested. They don't know it's food.
Right.
They're interested in what I'm doing, and they want to replicate it because all they want to do is copy, right? So then it's really important before you even give them food to sit them at the table while you're eating, so they can watch what you're doing. You can talk to them about the food as well, what it is on your plate. And, I think we really don't appreciate how much kids take in at this stage. They're incredible. Up until about a year, they don't really have the facilities mechanically to digest food yet. So the majority of food is the mechanicals of it, how they can move food around in their mouth. Their gag reflex is really close to the tip of their tongue. So it's, allowing them that practice of getting the food, putting it in their mouth, moving it around, spitting it out. It's really important for them to spit it out because that's a safety mechanism. So it doesn't mean that they don't like it, because originally when you put food in a kid's mouth, they'll just go, what? And that's, it's important for them to do that. And the more that they get better at the motor, the gag reflex moves along their tongue. So, fingers, the stuff that they can use with their hands is really important because they can control it. And so if you use a spoon, you're bypassing that gag reflex, which is so important to maintain in a child, until for the initial first few weeks and months anyway, not forever. I did spoon feed and baby-led wean both of my kids. But to begin with, it was just about them playing and actually just getting the motor control and getting the mechanical techniques first. And then I worried about nutrition when they were more like 8, 9, 10 months.
Yeah, that's so refreshing to hear, because at least in our culture, it's from the bottle to the jar, basically, of baby food, and the kids never do get the chance to explore and to learn about food and what it feels like and what it's like to, and then they're kind of in control then of what they want to eat, and instead of it's a surprise when it goes in their mouth on the spoon. I think that's so nice that it's actually treating them like people, and also when you give them actual real, like I do, steamed vegetables and steamed fruits, and they have a little more flavor. I actually use spices as well.
Yeah, it's really important to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, just because if I taste it and it doesn't taste good to me, like, why do I think that my baby wants to eat this bland, mushy kind of food?
Yeah, and without any recognition. I mean, you've got to appreciate that what you're doing with weaning is you're beginning a child's relationship to food, and if that child's relationship to food is completely passive and nondescript, you've got these things in front of them that they can't differentiate. You then, you get parents who are then like, oh, my baby would eat everything I gave him, and now suddenly that they're older and they're a bit more like a toddler, they're not eating the food that they used to eat. It's like, well, they didn't actually recognize the food to begin with, and they've never had that control over. They've no real relationship to food. Most kids eat on their own as well. You feed the baby first, and then you'll eat when they go to sleep and things like that. So they don't really have that really important relationship to food. That it's a community-based thing. That it's an exciting thing. That it's something that to be enjoyed, and so kids just, and kids are always, come on, eat up, and it's kind of like food becomes a scary thing that just, has angry parents surrounding it, yeah. And that's not what you want to build in a child. You want to build this relationship to food that is excited, that's full of senses, that they can smell it, they can see it, they can touch it, and they can taste it. So involving all of their senses is really important when you're introducing kids to food.
It's so interesting that we were talking about nutrition and how, but we're actually talking about not just what you're eating, but how you're eating it, for the child.
Oh, absolutely,
so I think that's important for adults too, to think about not just what you're eating, but how you're eating. So what applies to kids applies to us.
Yeah, it does. There's so much about mindful eating nowadays, particularly in weight loss programs and stuff like that, and actually being aware of what's on your plate, and a lot of that disassociation from food stems from childhood. If you eat watching the TV, you're passively eating. You're not mindfully eating. You're not really. I have so many clients that are just like, oh, could you just bottle pills with food in them, and I can just take a pill? And I'm like, no, you're missing all of it,
Yeah.
And a lot of that stems from, and also if you're formula fed, you've got to appreciate that every single meal tastes exactly the same, right? Every single meal tastes exactly the same. It's the same consistency. It's the same flavor every meal. Mm-hmm. So then when you then use purees, a majority of commercially made purees essentially taste the same. Right. They're all kind of sweet, really, even if they've no sugar added to them. The caramelization process of the pasteurization within the jar makes them really sweet. So the kids like that because that's essentially what formula tastes like as well. It's a carbohydrate, right? So they just get all this sweetness. So then the palate isn't developed, and then parents, kind of like, oh, they taste their food and they're like, oh, they just throw everything in together and mush it up, and it's just, you can understand why people then, adults, don't have any real favorite food, or their comfort foods are always sweet foods, so it makes sense when you look at somebody's history, and especially children's history. I always ask every mother and father that comes into my practice, how was the child born? What's the personality of the child like? How was the child weaned? What was the first foods you introduced to the child? To get an idea, especially with picky eaters, I get lots of picky eaters in my clinic. Why are they not interested in food? Why are they not playing with food? Why are they not tasting food? Or why are they not liking different types of food? They only want carbohydrate. They only want sweet things. Well, it makes a lot of sense why, because that's their history.
Exactly. So for a mom who's just starting to do the baby-led weaning, where they're tasting, they're feeling, and playing with the food, is there a concern for making sure they get all their nutrition in? Because I know a lot of times that you just want to feed them with the spoon to get them to finish their whole jar of food, so then you feel like, okay, they ate and they're well fed now. So how do you get around that for parents, making sure that they get enough?
Well, this is a good question because this concerns all of us, and it's how do we eat a balanced meal? What is a balanced meal? And actually, when I was starting to learn about nutrition, and you learn about the food pyramids, and you learn about all the macronutrients. So how many carbohydrates should you have? How much protein should you have? How much fat should you have in your diet? And I was getting really dissatisfied with the kind of general recommendations, and the food pyramid, of course, is largely politically based rather than actual human nutrition based. And so I was like, how do we know what human requires? What can tell us? You look at, cavemen diets, people that have been exhumed and they still have contents of food in their stomach. You look at all that kind of stuff. You're like, oh, okay, it's still a bit difficult to actually work out what we need. And actually going back to breast milk as a blueprint is really important. And the fundamental thing that you can pick up from breast milk is the content of fat in breast milk and the types of fat that's in breast milk. So when children are being weaned, it's about making sure that you're recreating breast milk on the plate as much as you're recreating breast milk in the bottle. So it's about, okay, what foods can we give our children that are densely packed in nutrients as well? So that kind of discounts all the breads, the pastas, the rices straight away, because there's very little in those foods that are actually going to facilitate the child with some building blocks to build and develop and get brain cells and get bone cells. So I tend to stick to fatty foods to begin with. So traditional first weaning foods are ghee, egg yolks, fish eggs, fish roe, bone broth. These are the kind of first traditional foods that you would wean your child onto, and it makes sense because these foods have a lot of nutrition in them. Sure, your children aren't necessarily equipped with the enzymes to actually digest the foods. That's also in breast milk. Which is why I tend to ask parents to include something fermented in a child who is formula fed. So something like a coconut yogurt or a little water kefir or something like that to help the enzyme break down within the digestive system of the food. But yeah, I'm looking to fats. So when you've got, pears are good first foods because they're squishy. Steamed sweet potato. Broccoli's great because it's got a little handle and they just smush it around, and they love that. And anything that can be like a baton size that they can grasp and then get a little bit into their mouth. But not to worry too much about the actual nutrition, because breast milk is or your formula equivalent is going to be your fundamental nutrition for your child at least until they're 1.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great. That's a great little guide. So, and you actually have for everyone watching today a little guide on weaning and top foods to feed your children. Can you tell us a little bit about what's in there?
So basically all of the information that I've kind of said now, plus lists of fast foods and recipes for finger foods and stuff like that. The recipes that I've used on my kids and have recommended to children in my clinic, just to help people with a more I call it the unconventional guide to weaning, because all of the other books are pretty different in their recommendations. Most books will recommend predominantly carbohydrate-based foods. So it's kind of going back to basics, going back to recreating breast milk, as using that as our blueprint.
That's actually genius, because that is it's the perfect food for babies is the breast milk. So if you recreate the nutrients in breast milk, then you're going to be...
You can't go wrong,
That's so great. Yeah, thank you so much for that, because that is it's definitely a great rule of thumb to go by. I mean, if you use the foods in the guide, or if you try it on your own, but I know avocado is a good one to try.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Perfect first.
So so thank you so much. So we're kind of out of time now. I could actually talk to you all day. But so it's been very helpful, and we can go ahead and grab that free guide. There's going to be a link right below this video, so you can just click down below and you can grab the free guide. And then where can we find you if we want to learn more about your practice and a little more about you?
Yeah, I've got lulanatural.com, so that's there, and obviously on all the social media networks. So I'm on Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook and G+ and Twitter. So you can contact me there as well, and I'm happy for anybody to get in contact and ask me more questions.
Thank you so much for being here today. It's been
such a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you received a lot of value out of this interview. I know that I did. I want you to open up to the possibility of making this new year the greatest opportunity that you have had so far to improve your life. This is about breaking out of paradigms. It's about learning the art of living. It is about honoring who you are as a woman as you discover who you are as a mother. It is about taking care of your body, mind, and spirit so that you can take better care of your family and be a shining example, a role model for your children so that they can grow up to be healthy, happy, and successful. I promise to continue to bring you educational, empowering, and inspiring content to help you achieve the body that you dream about and the life that you are meant to live. Stay tuned for more value-packed interviews and be sure to check out all the resources on my website, metabolicmama.com. Until next time, wishing you a happy, healthy, hot day. Take care, mamas.